Hello, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to SuperCoach Edge. Well, it is that time. We are on the eve, literally, of round one kicking off and the SuperCoach season kicking off with it. And boy, are we excited. It has come down to this. We've done a whole heap of analysis, all-around homework on the best players to consider for your team. Of course, we did release the analysis episodes, analysing each line by line, defence, midfield, ruck, and forwards. But it's led up to this. And it is ultimately selecting our best 23, as it were. So it's going to be a bit of fun and a little bit stressful, as it always is. I mean, there's always going to be late changes. I say that this is my final team. But as we know, with team sheets, when they are released on the Thursday leading into the Carlton-Richmond game, there's always chaos, always chaos. So all I will say to all of you out there is prepare for the unexpected. It always happens, rookies not being selected that we may expect to be playing in round one. And conversely, rookies come out of the blue, guys potentially not getting up or being declared fit to play in round one. Hayden Young, I'm looking at you, but a host of players out there under a bit of a cloud at the moment, a bit of uncertainty. Colby McKirch is one of those as well. So all I'm saying is just to have contingencies up your sleeve, because you don't want to be set on a team without having any sort of ideas in mind as to what changes you could make if you need to make them based upon team selection when it is released. So without further ado, ladies and gents, let us jump into our team. And it is a little bit different from the previous team release 2.0 video/audio podcast, depending on how you, of course, consume our content. So before we jump into things, I should mention as well, the SuperCoach Edge Open League, as you can see here on screen on YouTube, I'll read it out for those of you tuning into the audio podcast. It is 329568. So 329568. I will put the link in the YouTube and the audio podcast description as well. All you have to do is click on that link and it should prompt you to join the Open League. Of course, it is absolutely free. It is the Open League for a reason. At the moment, I think we've only got around about 390 odd people in the Open League, which is not much. So open to all of you out there, jump on in. I want to see that push way above 500. I think last year we had around about 900. It may have been sort of a midway point of the season. So I will keep the Open League open for the majority of the season. We might close it at one stage just because, for integrity reasons, whatnot, for those people leading the pack. We don't want any latecomers just jumping over the pack being like, oh, well, now I'm leading type thing. But we will, of course, keep that open. So again, jump into our Open League 329568, and that link will be put in the description for both the audio podcast and the YouTube video. So without further ado, ladies and gents, let us jump in to our team, shall we? And it is, again, a blank slate. And we're going to start from the top down, as we always do with defense first and foremost. And with defense, I must admit, there's a little bit of a change. Probably no surprise to those of you out there. Now, I had in my previous iteration of my team, Nasiah Wanganeen-Milera in D1. But, however, off the back of what I saw in opening round, I know it's a sample size of one game, but for me, it was enough to give me the heebie-jeebies and confirm in my mind the worry that I had about him potentially being tagged week after week after week if he looks susceptible to the tag, which he did against Collingwood. And, I mean, Perryman, he's not the most renowned tagger. I think he was tagging in the early rounds of 2025 before he became just a player off halfback, with sort of stints on the wing through the middle. But to be tagged out of the game by Perryman says to me that there's going to be some issues cropping up when he faces some actually half-decent taggers throughout the season. So for me, I just think with the 63 score first up as well, it's going to obviously play into his first price cycle and his first price change, which now it already has skyrocketed his break-even off the back of that 63. He needs to now score well above projections in the next two games in order to offset that low score first up. So, I mean, it's a blessing that the low score is in round one because, of course, that will drop out when it goes into the second price cycle. So for rounds 2, 3, and 4, with the next price cycle, it will be coming out of that if that does make sense, because you played opening round, round 1, round 2. That is his first price cycle after that. And then it's rounds 1, 2, and 3 is the second price cycle. So the opening round score of 63, whilst low, isn't the end of the world. So for those of you out there that are still keen to start Wanganeen-Millera, the old Wang, you can. It's not the end of the world. But if he has another low score in his second game, it is not good. Because it means that his price is going to plummet off the back of that. So the change I have made, and I have kind of been chopping and changing between both of these guys here, it is his teammate in Sinks, Jack Sinclair. Big score first up, and I spoke about it in the analysis episode for Primo, so go and check that out if you haven't already. But virtually I broke down the scoring average for Sinclair when he's playing in defence when Wanganeen-Millera isn't there to cramp his style. When Wanganeen-Millera has been shifted into the midfield, Sinclair gets freed up in a big, big way, and his average lifts massively. So go and check out that analysis episode where I do the breakdown. I won't go into detail now, but virtually he's a different player. And I think he's averaging around about 120 odd in the back part of the season when Wanganeen-Millera was shifted to the midfield. So for me, that just confirms in my eyes, go down the route of Jack Sinclair, who's a little bit underpriced, I think, and has a little bit of, scoring potential and a bit of a ceiling as well off the back of his starting price. Whereas Wanganeen-Millera, with this low score first up, as I mentioned, it's going to cramp his style going forward. And I think we can get him at a lower price point later in the season. And when that comes, we'll just have to wait and see. I mean, that's the risk that we take. That's the gamble we take. And we have to wait virtually until our cash cows have appreciated in value and maxed out in order to then consider, okay, is it time to go for Wanganeen-Millera? Is it time to go for another Fallen Premium in a different line? We'll just have to make that decision as it comes to pass. But Jack Sinclair is at D1. In D2, no real surprise here. I won't go into detail about him, but Connor Rosie, perfect start to the season. His fixture is incredible. North Melbourne, West Coast, Essendon, a whole host of, lowly ranked opponents that he should feast on absolutely, and that DPP is always handy as well. In D3, we just scroll down. Actually, we might just sort this by ownership just to make things easier. But Colby McKercher, who has actually dropped in ownership down to 21% as I record this, has virtually had an interrupted preseason, which isn't good. Broken finger. But as has come out today and yesterday, he is in line to take his spot in the round one team. So he looks to be fit enough. I mean, he's only a broken finger. He can still train. He can still do all that sort of stuff, but limited sort of contact. If it was a hamstring, soft tissue that would limit his fitness levels, I guess, I'd be more worried. But a broken finger, you can play through that. You can put on a glove. You have the stent around your fingers. Ginnivan actually played with something similar in the Hawks' first game against the Giants. So McKercher for me, I spoke about him again in the mid-price of rookies defender episode that I was analyzing. So go and check that out, of course, again. But I did a deep dive into the average of him that lifts in a massive way when he's playing off halfback compared to when he's playing in other positions, which he was at various stages in 2025, which really stunted his average. And he should be pushing, I think, quite easily an average of 100. May sound big, but that's my lofty expectations. He's shown that in 2025, when he was shifted back into that halfback position, he just becomes an absolute pig. Sheasel now is kind of running through the midfield exclusively, and there really isn't any other player that is playing this role as good as McKercher. And I mean, he's on his day, he can be so lethal by foot, and I know he can be quite wayward as well. The people out there that have owned him in the past that could attest to that, but he's a great player, and I think he should be pushing for a top 6 average for defenders come the end of the season. So I'm very, very confident in him. And at that price point, some of the best value going around in my eyes. Moving on to D4, and still the same as what I had in my previous team iteration, and it is Lockie Blackiston, the number 1 ruck now at the Dons until Nick Bryan returns from his ACL injury. The injury report for the Dons is still TBC in terms of the timeline of return for Nick Bryan. And I do think that he's going to be sort of, eased back into footy through the VFL and given time to do so. So the fact that he's still TBC, I would say he's at least 4 weeks away. That is obviously 2 price rises off the back of that with Blackiston. He's the number 1 ruck option. I know they've got Vicentini, but Blackiston is the preferred option. He's versatile, he's got a great leap, and I think these new ruck rules will really suit him to an absolute T. So I am very, very bullish on him, and I think he's going to be one of the players that benefits from this new ruck rule in terms of, leaping. If it was the old ruck setup where you could push and shove, he'd probably get pushed out of the way. He's a bit of a beanpole. He's athletic in terms of the make of him as a ruckman. And yeah, I just think at that price point, I'm willing to take the risk as a genuine mid-price for really. So he is in my team at D4. And I think just basically Blackiston, I think he'll probably at least get maybe 3-4 price rises, which by that point, hopefully, he has made us 100K, which I think what he showed across the preseason, an average of 80 odd, that's all we need, and he will be making bulk cash, even less than that even. But let's move on to D5, and again, a bit of a difference here because I think in this spot we had Caleb Windsor from the Ds. Now, I'm still a little bit bullish on Windsor, but I did read some news that Jai Cully, formerly of West Coast, now at Melbourne, who was running through the middle in the back part of 2025, I think he will cramp Windsor's style a bit in terms of the amount of CBAs he's going to be getting. I know now, and I spoke about it in the previous episode, without Petrarca, Oliver there anymore, and obviously Jack Viney being ruled out, I think, for at least 2 months of the season, that there is opportunity there for Caleb Windsor to really have that opportunity for more CBAs and more opportunity to score. And he showed that in the preseason, looked pretty good. But I just think at that price point that he's at, which is 283.3K, still in 26% of teams, which I think I don't mind. But I just think him alongside Blackiston, it's too much. It's biting off too much that I can handle, I think, in terms of if one of these guys fails, it's okay. But if both of these guys fail and they don't look to be making the money and producing the scores that we want as on-field scorers, it means that there's 2 holes in my team in the one line that I'd need to patch, which I don't really like. If they were on opposite lines, if Windsor was a midfielder, I'd probably run with the risk. But in the same line as defenders, yeah, I probably just am erring on the side of caution here. I still think he's a good pick. I think there's still enough positives there in order to select him. But for me, I see Blackiston as a better option with that outright number 1 ruck role compared to Windsor, who's stepping into an unknown role really. He hasn't really had, consistent time in the midfield for the Ds, enough for me to say, okay, well, he's adept at, going from playing off halfback or on the wing or up forward as he was, to now stepping into the middle. So for me, he goes out of my team, and you'll see as I go on, the money that he's freed up has actually allowed me to bring in another player that is a primo that I wanted in my team. So it works out in the long run. So moving on to the player that is in his position is a player that I already had in my team, but I think he may have been on the bench. It is Lindsay from the Eagles, Josh Lindsay, on-field scorer, and I think he's really shown that he gets enough of the footy, and he's really impactful. In his draft year, he was rated as one of the best users by hand and foot. Super efficient, I think around about 77% efficiency or thereabouts from memory during his draft year last year. And yeah, he's an absolute gun. So I think we can probably gamble with him being on field, but he is our first rookie on field. So next up in D6, we have alongside him in 47% of teams, rightfully so, Lockie Jacks or Jakes, however you want to pronounce it. I still don't know. Scored an 84 first up for the Dogs. Looked really impressive, and I think he'll probably carve out a spot off halfback. Looked really, really good. And an 84 first up really just does kickstart his cash generation from here on out. If he scored low, you'd probably say there's no real need. There's no impetus to really select him. But I think now with an 84 under his belt, he's hard to fade, that is for sure. And I think now he's showed scoring potential and job security, which again, harping back to my analysis episodes, as I spoke about, those are the 2 areas that we want to be looking at very closely when it comes to rookies, especially not so much primos and mid-prices, but for rookies, scoring potential and job security, which I think he has both of those in spades now. So he is in our team and on field as our D6 player. On the bench, we move along to no real surprise here, I think. Jai Sarong, 71% of teams, looked really good. Scored a 77 first up. We probably can't expect him to be scoring 77 every single week. He's a key position player, intercept marker, which kind of makes up a majority of his score from week to week. But he is in our team, 77 first up, much like Jax or Jakes. however you want to say it. Sarong, he will be able to have a bit of a nice little leg up with that 77 first up. Alongside him, is kind of struggling for this last bench spot in defense in terms of who we go for rookies. I did have Zeke Hewland, but took him out because I think at that inflated price point, you want to be scoring Jagger-like numbers, Jagger Smith type numbers, in order to justify spending on the cusp of 200K, which just is not worth it. And you can really get better bang for your buck with lower priced rookies. So I have gone for, let me scroll down here. I did consider Gibcus, but he hasn't really shown a knack for scoring in recent times and coming off that long-term injury, and he's had a wretched run with injury, and I don't really like taking too much of a gamble on him. Lockie Carmichael I would have liked, but he is since returning through the VFL off the back of a syndesmosis, I think, injury it was. But Michael Selwood, 11% at the moment. I expect that to rise just purely based upon the 70 that he scored first up. I'm a little bit worried about his job security. Scoring potential he has shown, I think when he was playing in the Sandful, it may have been for, was it East Fremantle? In the lower leagues when he was playing, he showed a knack for scoring quite well, Supercoach-wise. So willing to take the gamble with him with scoring potential, but his job security is what worries me. And I think that man I just spoke about in Lockie Carmichael is that player that can really dethrone him in the Dogs team, I think. So I'm a little bit weary. Not 100% set on Selwood. I do think that he sticks around on the team. Showed some nice signs and looked pretty good to the footballing eye away from the Supercoach side of things. So he is on the bench at the moment. Next up, let's move to the midfield. We have, first up, where is he? Where is he in terms of ownership? My Lord, we have to scroll all the way down. Amazing. He's actually lifted in ownership. It is Marcus Bontempelli, 25%. It was an interesting game by LeBont because, yes, he scored 113, which is, decent enough by his standards. Not quite, Bont levels, but the main reason for that was he had actually decreased CBAs 46%, which if you look at him historically, 46% CBAs, the last time he's had anything around about that mark, I've got to scroll all the way back. Gee whiz. To round 17, 2024, when he also had 46%. So he was playing a fair bit of time forward as well, but to great effect, scored 3 goals, 19 disposals, 4 marks, 5 tackles, and that 113 Supercoach score. So, some people might be scared away by that. And in all honesty, I'm actually pretty happy that that's happened because it means that people are jumping off the guy who is number one in Supercoach, hands down. He's showed that over the past couple of years. And no matter where he's being played, he can still score quite well. It's the Bont factor. It's the Bont tax, if you want to call it that. The amount of easy points that he gets being on field, no matter where he is. And for me, I just think, I don't think it's going to be something that continues throughout the year with great consistency. I think at times, yes, he may be thrown forward, but end of the day, we all know what he can provide in the midfield, and he's going to be going back to the engine room. Really, that's the end of the day. He was kind of needed at that point in the game to be thrown forward, provide a bit of an extra mix as an attacking option virtually. So in my eyes, I am not worried in the slightest. He's going to be a top 8 scorer. You may be saying, well, he's going to drop in price. He may just do that. But again, as I've spoken about previously, we know what the Bont's like. And you need some pretty low games, randomly low games in order for him to drop in price. Naturally, he will at this inflated price point of 706.8K, but in my eyes, I would much prefer to have him in my team than worry about, when can I get him in? Is he going to drop a low score this week in order for me to then try and plan to get him in? And you've got to have your, stars have got to align virtually because you have to be at a point where you have rookies available to cull that have maxed out in cash in order to then upgrade, say, a mid-price or another inflated rookie to Bont, which at that point in the season, you may not be able to do. So you will be having to shuffle deck chairs. You may have to cut, guys ahead of their schedule. You may have to even, sideways maybe a, deflated primo in a sense that's underperformed to try and get Bont in at that point of the season. So I don't want to be going through those headaches really at the end of the day. So he is in my team, locked and loaded. I'm not worried in the slightest. And I'm happy that it's actually, there are some people out there worried about him and taking him out of their teams. So that's kind of my thinking behind that. So Next up, no real surprise here, Zach Butters, 64% of teams, much like Rosie, as I spoke about, an incredible fixture first up against North Melbourne of all teams, and I think he scored about 160 odd last time against them, it may have been from memory, and yeah, just incredible. So Butters in our team, locked and loaded, not going anywhere. Next up is a new addition in my team, and someone that wasn't obviously there for the previous iteration, but is someone that I've had a bit of FOMO about, because he's a guy that I think could even elevate his game to another level in 2026, and showed in opening round that he is out to prove himself to the naysayers in terms of the Copeland Trophy voting and the Brownlow Stakes, everything else. He has got a chip on his shoulder, 41 odd disposals or thereabouts, whatever it was, against the Saints, 117 first up. Looked really good, really, really good. And it's a case, again, much like Bont, I think he's going to increase in price stakes, and it's going to be really hard to try and guesstimate when he's going to drop in price, if he even will. And he might be just an impossible reach to try and get into my team if I don't start with him. So that's my thinking there. And I've freed up some cash, as I spoke about earlier, with Windsor not being in my team. And going for another rookie. It freed up an extra 100K, which I needed to then put on the money that I had spare in the bank on the head of another player to then go up to day cost. And that player was in the next position from memory. He was in, M5. And it was in the form, which I'll let you know now who it was, Hayden Young. He goes out of my team because he's under an injury cloud. And one of my new rules, my ethos heading into 2026 that I've adopted, is any player that has a very bad injury history that's going into the season underdone with an injury interrupted preseason, they are automatically out of my team. I am not going to take the risk on a guy who is not durable. The same would apply to Parrish as well, but thankfully, knock on wood, Parrish has been okay. But Hayden Young, historically, as we saw last year, he had multiple issues with injury, and I don't want to be going through that headache of having to burn a trade to trade him out of my team. He's in 45% of the competition's teams at the moment, and it's kind of going almost against the grain. He's not in 55% of teams, obviously, so he is owned by the minority of the competition if you want to look at it from that perspective, but he's just, I think this might be an edge. If he gets injured or he's underdone, which he sounds like he is, he's got a lower leg injury. I don't quite know what it is. It just gives me the heebie-jeebies. So he goes out of my team, and to get in Dacos off the back of Young, of course, you're taking that every single day of the week. So let's move on to the guy that we have in M4. And it is in the form of, we have to scroll down, which I absolutely like to see. He's my boy, Sammy Walsh. 22% of people own him, 543.9K, which I think is incredible value. Scored 114 first up. I've glazed enough about Walshy. He is my boy. Absolutely love him, and he is going to another level. I've been down to open training, as I spoke about previously. I've put vision up from those training sessions on my sister channel, which is Blue Baggers Edge. So go and check it out. Give us a subscribe, all that sort of stuff. But he is looking like a different beast. He's had his first uninterrupted injury preseason since I think about 4 seasons. So he is looking fit. He's looking like he's in some incredible form as well. The way he's moving and the way that he's working in tandem with Jagger Smith, these guys, both as outside runners, really complement each other very, very nicely. So he's going to go to another level in 2026. Take it to the bank. As I said in my previous video, bookmark it. He will be on the cusp of a top 8 averaging midfielder, if not inside that top 8 group there come the end of the season. I'm confident of that. Next up, as I said, we had Hayden Young, but he goes out of the team. So promoted up to M5 in this position is, let me scroll up, it is Darcy Parrish. Taking enough of a risk with him. Again, another guy who has had durability issues, calf issues especially, across the journey, but willing to take the risk because he's looked good enough fitness-wise, which is all I want to see. The only thing I don't like about Parrish is he needs like 40 plus disposals in order to score half decently. So hopefully he doesn't give us those headaches, but at 334.6K, you can't go wrong there. Again, my deep diving analysis on all these players is in the relevant analysis episode. So go back and check those out in podcast format or on YouTube. So moving on now to the M6 position, and in my team still is Tanner Bruhn. Really love that role that he had off halfback. Don't really have to worry about him running through the middle now because it was a bit of a squeeze on with Warple coming into the team, Basilenka last season when Bruhn wasn't playing. And now that he's got this role off halfback, looked really good in opening round. So really passed the eye test for me, and I think he will be able to average some really nice scores and almost maybe make us 150, 200K if he continues his form and that role, which is pivotal. So Scott, please be nice to us. Moving on to the M7 position. And again, no real surprise here. Dyson Sharp has been announced to be making his debut in round 1. So best of luck to the young fella. But one of the probably more ready-made players from the draft just gone. And a great player. Really physically fit and has a nice frame that can make an impact early, I think. So he is there at M7. At M8, no surprise here. My other boy, Injagger Smith, 84% owned. He should be 100% owned. This bloke is an absolute jet. So even if you hate Carlton, hey, some do, some don't. You've got to put that aside. This guy is probably one of the better supercoach relevant players since, and talking about rookies and the impact that he could have a bigger impact than Michael Barlow did in his first year. So he's an absolute gun. On the bench, we have the Sizzler in Grill from Richmond. Of course, I could have had him in defence, but that's kind of my thinking as well. If I don't run with Michael Selwood in defence, I could easily switch Grill, the Sizzler, onto the defensive line and then maybe get another mid-rookie in, again, depending upon how the team sheets are announced on Thursday. So we'll be bracing ourselves for that if we need to make any changes there. But that's kind of what I've got in the back of my mind if I need to make any changes there and maybe bring in a rookie in the midfield that perhaps isn't on the radar as yet. But let's move on to the next bench position. And scrolling down, it is the former Blue in Jack Carroll. Now, I know a fair bit about this bloke. I was a big fan of him when he was at Carlton. Has been shifted to the sort of half-back line. And from what I read, as of today, Clark from St Kilda has been ruled out through injury, which is kind of, I think, his direct competition playing off half-back there. And even Paddy Dow as well, who's kind of been playing through the midfield, but two guys that I thought may have been on the cusp of maybe pushing out the likes of a Carroll from St Kilda's lineup. Now it's a case of wheels up, to use that term, and take off in Jack Carroll. So I think he's a really underrated player. I think Carlton are very, very stupid for getting rid of him because he showed some decent signs, and I'm a big fan of him. So he is in my team on the bench, and hopefully he can stick around in the St Kilda team long-term to make us some bulk cash at that. And next up alongside him is 42% owned Tom Blameris, who actually was working, I think, in the commercial or membership team at Collingwood, believe it or not. He, of course, has resigned from there due to conflict of interest, of course, but he is, I think, someone mature age, has won the round Fothergill Mitchell medal or whatever it's called nowadays as best VFL youngster or whatever. So he will get bulk opportunities, and he's shown in the preseason he can score quite well. So he rounds out our bench in the midfield. Moving on now to the rucks. And this is probably the contentious part of most people's teams. Do you go for two established rucks? Who are the two established rucks you go for? Do you go for two primos? Do you go for a primo and maybe a rookie? Who knows? But in my eyes, what I have done, I've gone for Luke Jackson, 27% owned, and Tim English, 41% owned. I just want to set and forget. I know there are people out there going for, say, a Jackson and a McAndrew or an English and a McAndrew. I don't mind that. If we did not have the flex position, I would probably endorse going down that route because McAndrew on the bench, scoring decently enough as the number one ruck at the Crows, would be an absolute waste. It would be a waste of points on your bench. But because we have the flex, I am going Luke Jackson and English on field, and on the bench, we have Liam Reedy, who, he might be in and out of the Carlton team. You might be able to use him as a loophole option, which is fine if he doesn't get games. But if he gets games, I think he probably will be able to make enough. He might be a slow burn, but might make us a little bit of extra money. That's a bonus. And then alongside him in the flex is McAndrew. And I've spoken about it in the previous team release iteration, team release 2.0. Go and check that out. But The abbreviated version of this is I just think with the flex position, it's silly to not put McAndrew in your flex than to put him in your R2 position, because if McAndrew, which is not an established player at the moment, we know he's dethroned Riley O'Brien at the moment at the Crows, but as I alluded to, when Strawn, who was the backup ruck for the Crows, dethroned Riley O'Brien, might have been, 2 seasons ago or thereabouts, Strawn didn't last long because all it took was a couple of bad games and O'Brien came back into the team off the back of some decent form in the Sandful. And those people that went for Strawn as a downgrade option that season, they were kicking themselves. So I don't want to be starting the season with McAndrew at R2 and then finding that he gets dropped. Because if you don't have money in your bank spare, you are all out at sea. And I know you've got to flex, whoever that player may be, to then override the lack of McAndrew being in the team. That's fine. You know, you're kind of foregoing a 23rd man and you've still got 22 players. But if you also have McAndrew at R2 and you're relying on Liam Reedy, as a Carlton man, I will say to you, do not be relying upon Liam Reedy as cover off the bench if McAndrew is dropped or injured or whatever. And I spoke about the example going back a few years ago. I think it was a season before Cherry broke out. He injured it was a lower leg injury or an ankle injury or something. And it may have been round 1, round 2. And those people that started with Cherry at R2, I think it was around about 200 and something K, very similar to McAndrew's prospects, because he was given pretty much the keys to the ruck over Goldstein, and Cherry went down injured in that game early. And people had to actually trade a primo down to a mid-pricer or a mid-pricer down to a rookie, which isn't too bad, depending on rookies available. But they had to do that in order to generate cash to then put on the head of Cherry to then upgrade him to a half-decent option. And it's not always available to do that. That's the thing. Depending on the amount of money you got, I would very much doubt that you don't have the ability to trade up to, say, a Jackson or an English, a Cherry especially. You could maybe do it to a DeConning at 524.2K, but it's virtually a waste of a trade so early. So with the flex, I think it's just a no-brainer in my eyes anyway, with Liam Reedy there. If need be, I mean, we could always put McAndrew there and shift him with Reedy as well if need be. And Reedy, if we have a forward option, we could potentially switch a forward onto the flex and have a bit of flexibility as well, which I'll speak about and show you when I have my team fully laid out. But that's kind of my strategy and thinking behind that. I think it's just a bit of a fail-safe. Same people are doing similar things with Vicentini. I would not be backing him in as R1 with extreme confidence. I'd have more confidence in McAndrew compared to Vicentini, but I mean, Port's ruck merry-go-round has been going for a long, long while with was Ivan Soldo and, of course, Jordan Sweet. And now you've got Vicentini in the mix now. So I'd probably be even more wary about that if you're going with Vicentini at R2. So McAndrew, that's kind of my thinking behind that. I think he's a waste not having him on field, but with the flex, it allows us to go with 2 primos outright in the ruck and McAndrew at the flex. And English and Jackson, English showed in opening round, he is absolutely just up to the challenge with what the new ruck rules just really throw up. And he's versatile. He doesn't have to rely upon ruck and hit out and contest and stoppages in order to score well. He can score well around the ground. He can push forward, kick goals. He's proved that in the past. And Jackson has shown in 2025 that he can be thrown into the midfield as a pure mid, not in the ruck, and score well. So when Sean Darcy, Hodor, or Shrek, whatever you want to call him, when he comes back into the team, I think Jackson will be able to play that versatile role between either ruck or in the midfield, which is what he was doing when Sean Darcy came back into the team late in the piece. So, yeah, he's looking really good. I think Jackson, and again, a more athletic, mobile ruckman who's able to score and generate these SuperCoach scores with his work around the ground. So both of these guys I'm very, very bullish on. Spoke about Cherry, I think he's a trap. I think he probably will, he's relying upon tackles at stoppages. With lower stoppages, I think he kind of might put a cap on the amount of score that he has from week to week, and his average may drop. Tom DeConning, I don't mind at 524.2K. If it was to pay up, it'd be probably with Max Gawn and Brodie Grundy, because again, 2 players that can really score well around the ground and not be so reliant upon scoring through the ruck avenue. So let's move on to the forwards. And, well, First up, we have Harry Sheasel, 75% owned, no real surprise there. Don't have to go into detail with him. DPP as well, which is extra handy. Christian Petrarca, he is in at F2, 70% owned, and that has skyrocketed, of course. I was choosing between going for Cozzy Pickett or Petrarca. Petrarca's made the decision easy for me with the 170 first up. Incredible. You can't deny that. With that 170 in his price cycle first up, he's going to go through the roof in terms of his value. So it's just going to be hard to try and get him back into or get him into my team if I don't start him in my side first up. So Track is in my team and looked very, very good. Next up at F3, we have Sam Flanders, 77 first up. I'm not too worried about that. I see some people are jumping off him. We're still able to get his hands on the footy a fair bit. I just want to have a quick look at CBAs for the Saints. He had 75%, which was the most of any midfielder, ahead of Garcia with 67%, ahead of Wangani Miller with 63%, ahead of McRae with 46%, and even ahead of Philippou with 42%. So he's got the role there, and that's all we want to see. It's a one-game sample size. In terms of his scoring being stunted, it was, in terms of his disposal efficiency, 61%, which really is unlike him. Last year, he was averaging, in terms of disposal efficiency, 75%, 79% the season prior to that, when he had that breakout season, averaging a 119 at the Suns. So it was an off game by him, but he will definitely get back to the heights of what he was showing in 2024 when he averaged that 119. So if you're jumping off him, I'd probably rethink that if I were you, but it's up to you, it's your team, and I just think he's incredible value at that price point and really, really difficult to overlook. Next up, we have Connor Butterick at 23% owned, 105. Again, a case of, I'm not a massive fan of this bloke because he hasn't really shown much of a tendency to score this well when he was at Gold Coast. He's playing a bit more of a different role now as a distributor off halfback for the Dogs, which is good to see, as opposed to being a pure lockdown. So he's an interceptor, he's a distributor. Looks okay, but again, I like to go for guys with solid scoring history behind them. He's been in the system for a fair while, but it is a new role. So it's a little bit of a risk there, but 105 does give us a little bit of security first up with that first price cycle. He should go up in price, and that's all we want him for, is generating cash. If he scores well enough on the field, well, hey, that's a bonus. So he's in our team, and out goes Cozzy Pickett, as I mentioned earlier. I really, really am bullish on Cozzy Pickett. I've spoken about him in the Forwards Primo episode, and when he's playing in the midfield, he is a different beast. I think the average is like 20 points more than when he's actually playing exclusively up forward. He's going to get more time in the midfield without Petrarca there, without Oliver, and without Viney there, of course, with him being injured with that Achilles injury. But with news coming out that he's actually flown back to Darwin, I think it is, in the NT, he's having some personal matters that he has to attend to. And they've said it is related to his partner, difficulties going through that, which I think the AFL website went into a bit too much detail about, which I was a bit surprised with. But I just think in terms of if he's going through these difficulties off field, it does put a little bit of a dampener on his on-field, I think, expectations and maybe output. So, I don't want to be owning him and then at the midway point of the year, finding out he has to fly back home to Darwin because of these outside matters that he has to attend to. And it sounds as if, Melbourne want to support him, which is great to see. But in doing so, I think it says to me that he may be heading back home and maybe missing games in season, which I don't want to really be dealing with, especially around the point of the buys, which just adds a spanner to the works if you had to deal with that. So unfortunately, Cozzy is out of my team to start. But if these things are resolved, if it looks like his head's in the game, he's getting these bulk CBAs and he's punching out these awesome scores, then I'll find a way to trade him into my team at some point, but I don't have confidence in starting with him in my team, which is totally fine because it's actually worked out that it allows me to, again, aim for a Nicky Dacos. And of course, you'd want him in your team ahead of Cozzy. Next up, we have at, F5. It is Philippou, of course, 63% owned, looked really good. 66 was his score first up. Was getting time in the midfield, which was good to see. And I think he'll just build upon it from there. 42%. that might actually be elevated. His time on ground was 76%, which is actually better than what it was in some games late last year. But his disposal efficiency is what really let him down, 56%, which is kind of in line with what he has had in games previous, which isn't the best, and kind of puts a little bit of a cap on his scoring ceiling. However, we've got to remind ourselves he's priced at 168.4K. He's there to make money and do so in bulk. If he scores half decently, that's okay. We'll go with that as well. And it doesn't really have to be the expectation. We're just hoping that he makes money. So he's at F5. Got to remind ourselves of that. And, I think if he scores well enough, then yeah, that'd be great. That's a bonus. But moving on to F6 and highly owned, of course, no surprise, Devon Robertson, 65% owned, 119.9K. He's an accumulator, was in his draft year, was at Brisbane when he had ample opportunity, which he didn't get in the end, running through the engine room, which he probably will get now. And I think he will, with a bit more confidence, be able to have some consistency in his game and be half decent. His kicking does let him down, but he's again there, bottom priced almost in terms of the regular rookie price at 119.9K, and he'll make us money. He'll generate cash, and that's what we want at the end of the day. Moving on to the bench now to round things out. And we have, scrolling down, Leo Lombard, 60% owned, and rightfully so. Scored a 69 ding-ding dinner for two, the first one of the season. And he's an absolute talent. Can push up the ground, play a half forward, even go through. Did he run through the middle? Let me just have a quick look at that, because he is such a versatile player and really high reps. Really high reps. No, I don't think he did. No, he didn't. But, a player that can play on the wing as well. And, he's looked really, really good and really bullish on him and will make us bulk cash. And best 23 for Gold Coast, hands down, that is for sure. And to round things out, we have Todd Marshall, 40% owned, 147.9K, almost, bottom priced in terms of what he can provide as a senior player. Best 23 for Port. So job security, hands down, rock solid. And he's playing off halfback now, and he looks to be more of that interceptor. So that is where his bulk of his points is going to come from. So we are very, very bullish with good old Toddy, Hot Toddy. So that is our team. Let us lock things in there. We'll save the team, and that is how we look. We have 38.9K remaining in the bank, which we have tried to do deliberately if we need to make any last-minute changes, more so with the rookies. We're hoping we don't have to change anything in terms of all the primos and mid-prices, but with the rookies, if we need to, that just gives us a little bit of a buffer, 38.9K for any changes that need to be made really end of the day. Of course, we don't want to be tearing our team apart in order to accommodate, for any changes due to the team sheets and team selection of guys not being picked. So that's kind of what I was alluding to earlier in this episode. In terms of the emergencies, we'll wait for team sheets, but we'll go Sarong first up. We'll go Grill, the Sizzler. Liam Reedy in the ruck, of course. And we might go Lombard off the bench in the forward line. But the last thing to really discuss is the captains and vice captaincy. So, Bond and Butters, they speak for themselves. Really good matchups. Bond against the Giants. He has scored previously 151 in his most recent encounter against the Giants, and prior to that, a 128, and then prior to that again, 93, which is back in 2024. But Butters against North Melbourne, gee whiz, there you go, 162. As I spoke about earlier when I briefly spoke about him, I was on the money there. 162 was his previous score against them. And prior to that, 113, 139. His average against North Melbourne, let's just have a quick look at that. Historically, average by points, average is 100.5, so he may have been injured one of those games. But he is someone I think that we can really bank on. It is Butters after all. 162 and 139 were actually the two big standout games across his sort of past 6 encounters against them. But geez, you'd think that North will be improved, but they can't combat Butters, surely. So for me, what we could do, there isn't really a loophole player either. That is probably something I should mention. And I've done that deliberately because we want to maximize the amount of cash that we can make through all the rookies. And the fact that we have these early buys as well, it means that we have guys on the buy that we can really lean back on as loophole options of guys not playing in the early buys across the first, 4 rounds of the season. So I think it's a bit of a waste to have a bit of a floating donut there. And as I said, Liam Reedy might be that player if need be when push comes to shove. And it always happens to be the case in the early part of the season, rookies getting dropped, guys getting injured, all that sort of stuff, where we're presented with options outside of a dedicated non-playing player where we can use, these injuries and non-selections and stuff as loophole options. So it always happens. And I just think in terms of maximizing the amount of money that we can get out of these rookies as cash cows and the amount of cover as well, which is also important, that's something to really factor in. So I think, we're just going to lock in Butters, I think, as our captain. Maybe Bont. Those are probably the 2 big standout options. English against the Giants, who historically, I think, give up a fair few points to opposition rucks, is another one. Briggs, not being the more mobile ruck, I think English will absolutely have. You'll have him for breakfast, for English breakfast, I think, in that matchup there. But yeah, for me, I think we'll probably go Bont into Butters, or because I think Butters plays, the second game behind Bont. So that's probably the mindset there. We could go Dacos against the Crows, but yeah, I think these 2 guys, I'm pretty confident in. Now let's go through and round things out by looking at our buy structure. So it's something to factor in, of course, but I always say do not get caught up too much in the fact that we have these early buys and, you're worried about all these guys being on the buy. The main thing to worry about with the buys, both the early buys and the later buys, is the number of primos that you don't have playing in that given bye week. So you want to limit the amount of primos that you don't have on field, okay? You don't want to have bulk, I'm talking about like 4 or 5 plus primos on any line total out for a given buy round, because it's so hard to try and cover their scores by rookies, because you're covering them by rookies off the bench this early part of the season. That's our only option for cover. And it does decrease your amount of, total scoring output for that given buy round. So I try and limit the amount of primos that I have out on any given buy round to at least 3 primos max, no more than that. If there's any more than that, I have to restructure my team, because I think, especially anyway for the early buy rounds, the later buy rounds, it's difficult at this stage to really guesstimate, because, of course, there are going to be guys in our team that are no longer going to be in our team come the later buys anyway, because they're going to be, if they're cash cows, traded out, or, mid prices, upgraded to genuine primos, all that sort of stuff. But let us go through and we'll just go into practice as to what I was just preaching there. In round 2, we have on field, out of our team, Dacos, Walshy, Tanner Bruhn, and Jagger Smith. And then we have Liam Reedy, who's not playing, on the bench at R3. So what I'm talking about there is 2 primos not playing that week in Dacos and Walsh. Tanner Bruhn is a mid-pricer. Jagger Smith is a rookie. Mid-pricer and rookie, I know they're both decent scorers in Smith and Bruhn, but they are virtually, I'm treating them like rookies, and we're having to replace the rookies with rookies. So it kind of cancels itself out, but having to replace primos on field and covering them with rookies off the bench, obviously they're not going to be scoring unless they have an anomaly score, or if they're like a Jagger Smith and they have a massive ceiling and big average. It's going to be a big ask for them to cover the average of said primo that isn't playing that bye round. So I'm not too worried about round 2. Before I go to round 3, round 2, I just want to mention as well, look at the primos that are out on that given week in terms of their ownership as well. If they're highly owned primos, it means that you are being impacted just the same as the rest of the competition. For example, Dacos, he's in 60% of teams or thereabouts. He's in the majority of the competition's teams at the moment. So the fact that you don't have him at your availability is the same as everyone else that owns him. Sammy Walsh, different kettle of fish there, because he's owned by 22% of the competition or thereabouts. So you're in the minority there. So you have to try and cover him by rookies that can score just as well, if not better than him on that week. That's the aim. And then, of course, Tanner Bruhn, who is, again, highly owned. Don't have to worry so much about that. And Jagger Smith, again, 80% of the competition own him. So they're going to be replacing him with rookies much like yourself. Moving on now to the round 3 bye, and we have rookies on field, plus the primos on field that aren't playing. We have Bont, Jakes, English, Petrarca, and Buderick. So in terms of primos we don't have available this given round, we have Petrarca, English, Bont, and that's it. So 3 primos out of our team. But again, highly owned primos, 2 of those at least in Bont, and more so Petrarca than Bont. But Petrarca, he's owned by majority of the competition, 70% or thereabouts. English is one of the more owned rucks. Again, a majority of the competition. Bont, as I said, is around about 25% or thereabouts from memory. So more of a minority type setup there. But for those people that don't own Bont, who else would they be owning? An Anderson or thereabouts. So they would be impacted on their given buy round, depending on their setup and everything else as well. But we only have 3 primos out this week. Jax and Buderick, we can be replacing them with Marshall easily. We can be replacing English with Reedy. I know it's a rookie for a primo, but again, highly owned primo in English. And Bont gets replaced by the best rookie. And what we can do as well, looking at round 3, with the guys that we have on the bench, we have the Sizzler in Grill, Carroll, and Blameris. In terms of the order of guys that are playing, so we have the Saints playing first of all these guys, Saints, and then it is Grill with Richmond playing second up, and then playing third up, Blameris. So what you could even do is with Bont, of course, you put the emergency on the player that's playing first up, which in this case would be Carroll. If Carroll scores like shit, he's not a viable replacement for Bontempelli. So therefore, we have to make a decision between Fielding, Grill, or Blameris. So you kind of narrow things down. If you have 3 options there, that's the way to go about things. Put the emergency on the player that plays first up in that fixtured round. If they score well, leave things as are. But if they score shit, then you don't obviously want to loop their score on field. You just simply say, if we want to go with Grill, we say he's going to score better than Blameris. You simply put Bont on the bench, and Grill comes on field. Of course, make sure that the VC is not on Grill, because previously it was on Bont. But you get what I'm getting at there. So that's kind of the way to navigate the buys as well. If you have multiple options as cover off the bench for 1 or 2 players. So if you have Bont and another player that were unavailable that given round, you can still do the same sort of thing as well. So just keep that in mind. But that is the way things look for that round. Of course, you will see as well that Jax is not playing, and I don't have any viable options off the bench to cover in terms of Selwood and Sarong, because they're both on the bye as well. It does mean that we're going 1 less player on field. But of course, remember, these early bye rounds and the later bye rounds, they're best 18. Do not stress. If you're down 2 players, if you have to field a best 21, it doesn't matter. It's best 18. If it's best 20, if you have 21 players available in your team, it's going to be whittled down to 18 anyway. So it means that 3 players will be dropping out of your team naturally. So don't always worry about, I need a full team to choose from. I need a full allocation of players on field. Yes, it does help you in terms of whittling down those lower scores in your team. But end of the day, it's best 18. And again, the main thing to be concentrating on is the number of primos unavailable in a given buy round. So don't try and worry or get caught up too much in the fact that, you may have, guys on field in specific lines that aren't playing. So in this given round, in round 3, Jax will not be able to be covered by Sarong or Selwood. Bont can be covered, obviously, as I spoke about. Reedy can, hopefully he's playing that round, can cover English. And likewise as well up forward, we have Petrarca and Buderick unavailable. And we only have Marshall available off the bench because Lombard is on the bye as well. So it means that we have virtually Jax and one of Petrarca or Buderick unavailable. So it means we've gone from 23 players down to 21. And again, we don't care. It's going to be best 18. You might be impacted in your head-to-head leagues or whatever if your opponent has more players at their expense, but we don't care about that. We're going for overall. So that is kind of the explanation there. Moving on to round 4, we might quicken things up now. We have, in terms of primos out, we have Sinclair and Flanders. I'm going to count Flanders as a primo because I do think he's going to be a keeper, a genuine keeper, top 6 averaging forward. So 2 primos unavailable there. And Philippou as our rookie, unavailable as well. So Flanders and Philippou, we can replace them with Marshall and Lombard, easily covered there. And then we have Sinclair being covered by either Sarong and Selwood, much like I spoke about with that example with Bont being unavailable in round 3, being able to be covered by 3 players. With Sinclair unavailable in defence here for this round, we have Sarong and Selwood at our expense. So what we could also do here, again, use the emergency loophole option. So who of Sarong and Selwood play first? Looks as though Sydney with Sarong plays first, Saturday at 7:35 against West Coast. And then the Dogs for Selwood play at 7:20 against Essendon on the Sunday. So you can easily put the emergency on Sarong. If he scores well, leave things as is. And if he scores shit, well then you just sub off Sinclair for Selwood. And that gives you a double bite of the cherry in that particular line in defence, obviously, which is what I am getting at. So those are the early buy rounds, I think easily covered by all the guys. I think there's that one round where we're going down from 23 down to 21 players. But again, everyone's going to be in that boat. I think the round 3 is the more hard to navigate of the lot. So people probably will, by and large, be in the same boat for those fielding Anderson and the like as well. Now, moving on to the later buys, and it's a bit hard to navigate here because, again, we have guys in our team that will no longer be in our team at that point because they will be traded out cash cows. There will be mid-prices traded up to primos and so on and so forth. So really hard to be planning for the later buys, but Rosie, Butters, McKercher, they're all highly owned players. Petrarca, she's all highly owned as well, and McAndrew unavailable that round as well, but we could potentially go Liam Reedy into the flex. So that is the round 12 buy. Round 13, easy to navigate. There's only Richmond and whoever it is on that buy, so not too affected there. And then also in round 14, we have Dacos, Walsh, Jagger Smith unavailable, and then Jackson and Reedy, which, as I said, we can easily put McAndrew on field to cover for Jackson, if he's still in our team, that is. And then Liam Reedy, we can swap with either Marshall or Lombard off the bench up forward. And then with Dacos, Walsh, Smith being unavailable, well, depending on the rookies and cover that we have off the bench, we can cover those guys as well. Moving on to the next buy round. Let me just reset things there. At round 15, we have Blackiston, Lindsay. Both of these guys most likely will not be in our team. Sarong as well, they're all on the buy. Parrish and Sharp, most likely they will be upgraded by that point. And Robertson as well up forward, so not too worried. So at this point, we don't really have too much planning that we can do. Round 15 is going to be very interesting. Also round 16, because there's Jack Sinclair, Bontempelli, Tanner Brun, which is probably going to be upgraded by that point. English, Flanders, all out in terms of primos. And then Philippou and Buderick as well, and Jackson, Selwood and Jack Carroll. So again, probably concentrate more so on the early buy rounds and maybe even round 12 and 13 if you can. But just have those round 12 and 13 in mind when you start approaching those later buy rounds, just to make sure that you're not going to be left high and dry in terms of guys on the buy. I guess lastly, in terms of strategy, you may be looking at my team and saying, oh, it's cookie cutter, this, that, the other. But I just want to give you an insight into my strategy. Now, cookie cutter is not a bad thing. When it comes to getting pod players, that isn't always necessarily a good thing. Getting the pod players that are going to shoot off, in today's SuperCoach, environment, very few players slip through the cracks when it comes to, pod players. In the past, Tanner Brun may have been a bit of a pod, may not have played that televised practice game and kind of gone under the radar. It's very, very hard to try and find, super pod players. And with that, my strategy has always been, when it comes to pod and the pod strategy, what will differentiate you from the rest of the pack, of course, will be the trading in season from week to week, but also, more importantly, is jumping on those correct cash cows, the best rookies from the get-go. Because what that will do is it will give you more money in the long run to trade them in for. Once you cash them in, you cash them out. What it will do is give you bulk money to then reach for the uber primos, whereas other teams that maybe perhaps didn't start with the best or correct rookies or cash cows in this case, they will have to skimp and they won't be able to reach for the uber primos like yourself, and they'll have to settle for the next tier primo. Or even, if they can provide that, maybe they have to settle on a mid-price so come, the end of the season for upgrade season, because they just don't have enough cash to spread around their team. So a bit of wisdom there. When it comes to strategy, for me, cash cows and cash is king. It's a cliche, but it applies so well every single season. And cash cows are really pivotal in dictating whether or not you end your season with a team that's upgraded with uber primos or a team that's upgraded and finishing with, so many mid prices sprinkled in, or primos that are maybe on the cusp of being an uber primo, but not, so on and so forth. So that is kind of an insight into my whole thinking around, cookie cutter teams and everything else. So it isn't necessarily a bad thing. If your team is similar to mine, don't stress. Again, where the skill comes into it, where you're going to differentiate yourself from the rest of the competition is in trading and, in my strategy anyway, getting on the best cash cows. Well, that's it, ladies and gents. Thanks as always for tuning in. Really do appreciate your company. If you are tuning into the YouTube side of things, feel free to let us know your comments and thoughts in the comment section down below. And how is your team come together? How does it differ from my own team? And are there guys that you are maybe thinking about and chopping and changing between as well? Always keen to hear your thoughts. But you can hit us up on socials as well, on Twitter at @supercoach_edge. And we always are happy to open a dialogue with all of you out there. Questions, comments, everything else. And don't forget, of course, to join our SuperCoach Edge Open League. Again, the code is 329568. So 329568. We will put that link in the description, both on YouTube and the audio podcast. And we will be discussing the placings of the Open League from week to week. So if you want to get your name called out, if you are amongst the top 5 to 10, please join our Open League. Bit of fun amongst the SuperCoach Edge community, locking horns with each other and see how you fare amongst the rest. Now, if you are watching us on YouTube, make sure to hit that subscribe button to be across all of our content as it drops, because speaking of content in season, it is going to be a very, very, very exciting season because we have multiple bits of content every single week. We have the normal episode. Then, of course, we've got the team talk, as well as a couple of other little things as well sprinkled amongst it. So make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel to be abreast of that, and give us a like. That always helps the YouTube algorithm bump up our content and spread it far and wide. And you can hype us as well. Hype the video, and that does very, very similar to what the like button does. And you can even hit the notification bell to be notified and given an alert when our content does drop. If you are tuning to the audio podcast side of things, whether it be Spotify, Apple Pods, wherever you may listen to podcasts, whatever platform that may be, all of them pretty much have a follow button. So make sure to follow our audio podcast. And again, you will be notified of when our content does drop. You can even give us a rating. If you are an absolute legend, give us a 5-star rating, and you can give us a review as well if you have some extra time up your sleeve. Let us know how we're going, bit of feedback, nothing too scathing, I hope, but really do appreciate all of your support throughout the course of the preseason, because now, as I said, it starts from here. The serious stuff starts, and we hope that we have helped you in some way, shape, or form with our analysis and helped out with your own homework and constructing all of your teams. So with that, we are wishing you all the very best heading into round 1. And it's going to be stressful, we know that, but as I said, have some, plan Bs up your sleeve, have a little bit of money in the bank if you can afford it to, make some minor adjustments here and there with rookies and cash cows and everything else, because again, that is the key to all of our teams being fully completed come the end of upgrade season in 2026. Well, thank you once again for tuning in. Really do appreciate your company. And until next time, we'll catch you for the next one. All the best, good luck, and we'll see you then. Cheers.